Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your king, King Clifford Jefferson, ascendant of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man, Jute, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know as the King of Peace. I'm here with another marvelous lecture to inform you of what it is that we are all called to do. This is a continuance of all that has been put forth before you from the Third Covenant English Church to get all of you subjects, heirs in line to what's about to come. All right. As well as to form those who are subject to the whim of those who are only objective is to flee those who have no knowledge of themselves. All right. So once again, this is another video to expose those. And this time I'm going to use Sarwan Seti. All right. Those who know him, he goes by the name of Sarwan Seti. The brother's a very informative brother. I won't take that from him. But, you know, it's very important when you take it upon yourself to teach people that you teach the people the truth. All right. Not pick and choose whatever that you use to fit your scheme. All right. And what they're doing is scheming and scamming the people out of a understanding that was uh, uh, divinely and rightfully prepared for them, and it's our job to give it to them. All right, and that's not being done. All right, instead they choose to follow the pattern of those who enslaved us and use the abstract ways of enslavement to validate their podium or their platform. All right, it's no different than what government is doing on the national, international, state, federal, uh, public, private, whatever uh, theme or scam you choose to associate with it is all being done. And I'm going to show you again today. All right. And we're going to draw from Dred Scott case. Once again, Dred Scott case is going to show you who the real slaves are. All right. We're going to be joined by my Archbishop in the second. He should be coming on shortly. All right. So we wait for him to be able to moderate. All those who were at the sound of my voice, I know you enjoyed the past couple of lectures. That's for you. You're really going to enjoy this one as well. All right. Is once again, uh, we need to be very careful about who we so-called say we follow. All right. I'm pretty much go over everything I talked about yesterday. All right. But to bring a little bit more clarity for those who viewed the lecture yesterday, but didn't get that clarity. Okay. So once again, it's a great uh, privilege to be able to display this information to you how it should be from anybody who claims to have an incumbency or hold a tenure such as this. All right, so without further ado, it is December 30th, 2023, which is in the Berber year 2973. All right. Once again, this is to inform you that those who claim to be teachers don't know what it is that they're teaching. I'm going to show you once and for all. Without further ado, let's get started.
You know, in the world of real estate, being invisible isn't always an advantage. In our litigious society, attorneys and creditors are constantly on the lookout for potential targets. The more they see, the more they might be tempted to come after what you've built or what you are building. Listen, I know as a real estate investor that your assets are not just houses. They're your peace of mind, your hard work, and your future. But what if you could become invisible? And what I'm talking about is setting up specific structures like limited liability companies or land trusts in a way that give you complete anonymity. Hey, it's easier than you might think to protect your assets.
I want to listen to what he has to say, because this is what we're discussing. If I pay close attention, because we're gonna go over those terms.
Always use an anonymity compliant LLC that does not disclose your ownership or management of the entity. This means your name does not appear on the entity, which in turn means your name will not be tied to the property in public records. You know, I've been investing for over 20 years, and I've helped over 30,000 investors create safe, secure portfolios. My clients have discovered that setting up LLCs and trusts with privacy isn't just a strategy, it's a shield. It keeps prying eyes away. And with your assets shielded, attorneys may think twice before pursuing you. Think on this: they can't sue what they can't see. More than just protection, using an anonymity approach when you're planning provides peace of mind and knowing you're not an easy target, which means sleeping better at night. I think the choice is clear: be exposed and vulnerable, or be protected and invisible. Listen, stay protected, stay private, invest smartly. To unlock more of the secrets of secure investing, I'd like to invite you to download a copy of my free ebook, The Invisible Investor, today.
Okay. So this is what's been going on as he established private ownership of real estate. Has nothing to do with land. It's very important for us to understand that, because private real estate and how they see it is a result of the creation of what we call a cess du que, which is a fiefment given out to anybody other than our primogeniture heir. All right. But before we go into that, we wanted to discuss, how loosely we use words and terms to use to uh, uh, line our pockets with whatever it is we use to get the people to pay us for the so-called information that we so-called give to the people, which is incorrect information as a result of the language that you're using not properly being understood of how you're using it. All right. And you just give it to the people loosely, and it remains abstract in their understanding as a result of you giving it to them abstract, not giving it to them concrete. And by way of what I mean by abstract and concrete, you should know by me already. All right. So once again, let's get to this marvelous lecture that I'll break down in detail. All right.
Sharks, let's get right to it. Crayon Essence has the liquid gold of the Caribbean, the most nourishing oil. Takes over the world.
1 second. And look how much cheerleading he do for himself, but don't know what it is that he's saying. All right, watch how much he flaunt his channel.
All right, family.
I don't knock him,
Black power is the true power. With General Sarah Soon said he kicked back. Get your mind ready for some information that's guaranteed to be happy. That's right, family. I'm excited and delighted to be accepted member to the Sarah Soon said YouTube page, the dynamic page. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know we on that revolutionary frequency and energy, and you understand, and we go where no scholars has ever went before. We go deep into, the cave and drag them on out of there, information and all. So, the link, become a member right there in the video description right there in the chat room says join, click that link. You get a video introduction rundown on the membership, what they entail. You see one you like, you should most definitely join. Even if you don't, I appreciate your presence here at the Sarah Sucetti YouTube page. Continue to engage, continue to advance. That's right, ring the alarm, KingSeti.com, online marketplace official, General Sarah Sucetti, DVD, t-shirt, tank tops, hoodie for the king, the queen, and the children. That's right. We got it for you, for the king, the queen, and the children. 25% off selected items at this time. Shop today, save it today. We also got African and Kemetic jewelry, holistic tonic, and remedies, home decor, accessories for every room in the house. KingSeti.com, 25% off at this time. That's right, family.
King Seti. His name is King Seti. First of all, the word Seti is a term for an Egyptian deity. All right. And the word Seti derived from the word Set, which is from the English word or Greek word Seth. All right. We're going to see that, right? And we know that in regards to you having this last name or so-called name that you so-called call yourself, which I'm pretty sure is not a surname because that's the name that's on your birth certificate. All right. So if you say that your last name or given name or whatever name you choose is SETI, and then on top of that, you're going to call yourself a king, which means that the office that you hold was an inherited office from prior kings who have that last name descent based on primogeniture. All right. So that means that all this must be understood before you call yourself a king. And then knowing that, all right, you got to call yourself by who created you, because you're saying that the one who gave you the name was your creator. All right. But if you track SETI, SETI was a Coptic deity with the head of a dog. All right. All right. So you need to be careful with what you're talking about in regards to getting the people to qualify it and attract themselves to it, because it's teaching wrongful descent and biological order of how things should be. All right, so let's continue.
Pull the fire alarm, generalseti.com, SETI University, over 1,000 videos of pure heat, nothing but heat, nothing but heat. And so you got 1,000 videos, over 1,000. I might as well go on and update there because it's moving closer to 1,500. And you're talking about not only the general, we got the master teachers, we got supplementary DVD, not DVDs, but videos and documentaries, supplemental, but also monumental and instrumental lectures and documentaries from the master teachers and researchers dealing with the various subjects.
I think that was me.
Other general, with the general having an overview on the master teacher. And so, yes, we
overview. Hold on.
Having
an overview over the master teachers that he's referring to on his platform and his school of thought. All right. So he's going to give his own syllabus or dissent on what the master teachers are saying. He never said who those master teachers are. All right.
Education into the future like none other. So most definitely get over there, check us out, generalseti.com, SETI University. Just got off of Patreon with nothing but the heat. You got to get over there today. I had to get on them goddamn Greeks and them Catholics and them Jews. And so we had the pedophilic rites of Bacchus practiced by the Catholics and the Jews. And we also had, what else did we do? We did, what was that of? Yeah, we on their head. Very hard. Very hard. What was that? Yeah, I was on their motherfucking head. Yes, sir.
Excuse the profanity.
What was that? The pedophilic rites of Bacchus practiced by Catholics and Jews.
This is what they talk about.
Yeah, is the God of the Bible a homosexual Greek god in disguise? And you got to get over there and check that shit out. You see what I'm saying? Because you thinking the Bible is anti this and no. It's gonna fuck you up. I'm trying to tell you. You better know what you're reading and what you're rehearsing. Because you damn sure been to say something, but I know the frequency alone.
And what he just said.
Nigga say, wait a minute, I don't think that sounds too good. You know what I'm saying? That shit right there don't sound too good. Let me get up out of this real quick. So get on over there to Patreon.
Sorry.
I get that heat, and it is heat now. You see what I'm saying? And make sure you subscribe to all my YouTube channels, King SETI, General SETI, Cyrus SETI. Rock that notification bell, give the video a thumbs up, like it because you love it. share it with your family and friends, and comment. Just don't say nothing stupid, because I will ban your ass. You will be about it. Now we're gonna be talking about if man is created in the image of God, then God is inherently evil. Ain't no goddamn doubt about it. And see, I know all you niggas and say this nigga got enough nerve to say this on Sunday. This nigga got enough nerve to come in here on Sunday and say some shit like this. You know, on the Lord's Day. On the Lord's Day, that's right. You come kick the goddamn church door right on in and come right in with the real truth. You see what I'm saying? Not any truth, but the real truth.
So he's coming to kick in the church because the church is not telling the truth. I'm not saying he's wrong in regards to the church he's talking about. He ain't talking about our church, but he's saying that what he's saying in regards to what the church is teaching, he hasn't specified was church, is wrong in regards to the God that responsible for the church and the teachings of the church and those who follow and teach the teachings of the church, for which he's not teaching.
Now, Isaiah 4, chapter 45, verse 7. Let me see if I get that.
Now, we just got finished reading Isaiah 45:4
behind me,
in my last lecture.
It says, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. I say, what the fuck? Let me get this. God did, not the devil. People always talking about the devil. I put the D on it. The devil. You see what I'm saying? The devil did. No. No, you got to get this shit right. No, God did this. God did this. I'm gonna break this shit down to y'all.
Okay.
Y'all always, y'all niggas love y'all some God. Y'all love y'all some God. Yeah. Of course we can.
Now remember, Isaiah means God is salvation. That's what the word Isa means. God is salvation. All right. And his focal point is evil. All right. Evil is the characteristics of something or something. All right. Evil is the characteristics of that something, that someone, or that something. All right.
Yeah. But, yeah. I form the light. This God. And create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. You see?
So he took out one scripture of a prophet, just like Jeremiah, to rouse the people up in regards to questioning, is God who created the devil really is the God that created evil, and therefore he is evil. All right. And he's talking about an abstract God. All right. They always stay in the spook world, never bringing it to concrete, where 3 verses above, the same God that he's making reference to is making reference to the children of Jacob and Israel, his elect, in regards to him knowing them by their surname. All right, their descent. And God, the spook God, don't have surnames. All right? Because you have a surname for a particular reason. Some that denotes to descendancy, some denotes to your occupation, some denotes to territorial, some denotes to just the characteristics. All right. Those are the purpose for surnames. All right. 3 verses up, it speaks about that. He didn't even channel in on that. All right. He's want to focus on in the abstract world because that's where he's most influential in. All right. Well, not having to show receipts.
Now let's deal with it. I sit here and I thought about this. You see, the devil ain't got no goddamn power. You see, most people say God is good and the devil is evil and no, God damn it. God, that evil is a power of God. You see, evil is an attribute of the Lord. See, y'all don't want to deal with that. Yeah, evil is an attribute of God himself. He created evil. You see? So the reality is, listen to me now, if God hadn't created evil, the devil couldn't exist. That's powerful. Did you know that? Yeah. You see, if it wasn't no evil, then there's no devil. So when God created evil, a part of God broke away and became the devil. You see, it became the devil. But the devil could not exist if God hadn't created evil.
Okay, so now you playing games now. Now you playing games. You saying that in order for the devil to exist, which evil is the characteristics of the devil, that means that God had to step outside himself and take on another nature. All right. Which we all know common sense that we both have both natures in ourselves. All right. We both have both natures in ourselves. But the nature in ourselves in which he speaks to is in the abstract world. All right. And no one has been there to confirm the abstract nature of oneself because that will be considered an extraterrestrial. Unless you understand, and if you understand it from a biological uh, 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 standing, then you know that extraterrestrially we are made up of prokaryotic cells, which are extraterrestrial genes. All right, that give life to eukaryotic cells to allow us to unfold from one dimension, two dimensions to three-dimensional beings. All right, and that comes from past memories of your unfoldment here on this plane of being manifested, not in the abstract world, but in the concrete. He has yet to prove the existence of human beings in the concrete, which all have their place in God's creation. All right. Whoever created this wonderful so-called world that we live in is not a natural person, i.e., a physical person. All right. So, in the true sense of the language of the scripture, he's totally out of bounds with the geographical, territorial extent in which the subject matter, i.e., the chapter, is making reference to. All right. We must understand that. So he's trying to associate God's with the creation. First of all, God comes from the word good, which means good. Okay? Comes from the word good, which means good, G-O-T-T, which means good. All right? Contrast to that which means evil, which is the characteristics, just like color, it's the characteristics to what we call people who identify as black people. All right? When they are not colored. That's my aim to prove today. Just like we are not evil people, nor are we the devil, and nor are we descendants of evil people call themselves the devil in the abstract world or the concrete world, because the surname tells it all. All right? So just leave the confusion of what this gentleman is saying, so-called name said not Sonetter. All right? His name is Sarwan Sutin Seti, part self Sonetter. Yeah, I did you the other day. Sarwan Sutin Seti. Seti, assuming to be his personal name, all right, it goes back to Seti, all right? So just leave this and let's build, y'all. First of all, Isaiah. Isaiah 4 of chapter 45. All right. Thus said the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden to subdue the nations before him. And I will loose the loins of the kings, shall open before him the two living gates, and the gates shall not be shut. We know who Cyrus was. He was a Persian king, and he's the one who freed the Israelites according to the story. All right, because Cyrus is considered to be the oracle of God. All right, we know Cyrus wasn't no deity coming from outside of Earth. All right, he was a human being. All right, so whoever spoke to Cyrus must have been a human being. All right, i.e., a higher king. All right, from another territory, I might say. So it says, "I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gate of brass and cut asunder the bars of iron. And I will give to thee the treasures of darkness and the hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by thy name, and am the God of Israel." All right. "For Jacob my servant, and Israel my elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me." Apparently, he must not have been the one who know God, because he doesn't have a surname to distinguish him from everybody else. All right. Instead, he's chose to go on and assume that this is making reference to something outside this planet and the creatives who exist outside this planet, who are abstract and had no physical contact with human beings. All right. First of all, spooks don't speak. Spooks don't have a voice box. All right. So how are they communicate? Brother Seti? "I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me." All right. And we know God means good. So we know that we're talking about the nature of the king. "I girded thee that thou knowest not, but thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else." All right. I guess that's just distinguishing one character to one king contrast to another king. Of course, if you king, you assume yourself to be the head up, the head honcho. All right. "From the light and the create," it says, "I form the light and created darkness. I make peace and I create evil. The Lord do all these things." All right. This is his focal point. All right. This is his focal point. We know light and darkness is descriptive. All right. Light and darkness is descriptive, and the word or the phrase formed in lieu of the descriptive word light and darkness is based upon the two faculties that he's making reference to after that. I make peace and I create evil. All right? And we know God means good, and we know evil means the devil. And this is making contrast to that which is peace, because if there is no peace, then it means there's war. And there's war, then that's a characteristic of the devil, along with the so-called term evil. All right? "I, the Lord, do all these things." All right. So we're going to stop right there. So let's go into the term evil, the characteristics. All right. The origin of the word evil, because we know that the human beings, known as the Anglo-Saxons, known as the word or the term angles, English, angel means messengers of God. All right. Here in the concrete world. All right, which denoted to a territorial that they inhabited, which was the land of God, i.e., Anglo's land or English land. All right, contrast to the land of what we call the evils. All right, or the land of the devil. All right, very important to understand that. Let's move forward. Evil. All right, we know why names were given to us for different reasons. All right, so apparently, as we know it, evil denotes the characteristics. All right, possibly of an individual. all right, or associated with a territorial, all right, that was considered evil, all right. Follow where I'm going with this. The surname, as we see, evil, all right, spelled Evil, we all can assume that it's the characteristic of the person or the persons or the thing or the things that are associated with devilment or evil, all right? The surname, but we want more of a concrete affiliation to associate this word evil with, all right? The surname occurs in many languages, all right? But the only instance of which I recollect in England is that because we're reading in England, all right? It's not in Spanish, it's not in Scottish, it's not in German, it's written in English, all right? The surname occurs in many languages, but the only instance of which I recollect in England is that of a monk, Wilmus Cognimento Diabolus, all right? The French de Ville, naturalized among us, has often been misunderstood to be the synonym of Satan, and various vowel changes have been made by the bearers of it to avoid this very objectionable notion. All right? Hence, it is commonly written Deval, Devol, Deval, and etc. While in record, Deval, Deville, Deville, and etc. are found. All right? One of the sources notes they were found from Deville or Devilsdale in Newcastle in Normandy. All right? We know surnames originated where? Everybody say it for me. Normandy. Early origins of the evil family. All right? Pay close to the attention to what I'm about to say. All right? I'm going to take it from the abstract to what he was talking about and make it concrete for you, for all those who follow him. Because look how many followers this man got. All right? Look at all the patrons this man is asking for, but yet he don't have a clue about what he's talking about in regards to God, or moreover the devil. All right, because they're one the devil and evil is synonymous, though, but God and the devil is not. All right, because we know the word God is the word good, which means good. All right, let's get there. The surname evil was first found in Sussex County or Sussex Shire, where the first mention we meet with regarding the descendants of this knight is in the reign of Henry I, when the Geldi Albany being enfeoffed by the crown of the manor of Egmonton. Knox confer is upon Robert de Ville. Did y'all hear that? Did everybody hear that? Who appears to have been the ancestor of John de Ville, the governor of York Castle, a potent baron of the time of Henry III, who of England, and one of the most active against the royal cause. All right, so now we got some real avenues to go through to find the source of this so-called term evil that he's making reference to. All right, but before we do that, let's look at the word devil. The devil. The surname occurs in many languages, but was only an instance which I can recollect is English. Pretty much what you read for the word evil. All right? Same thing. Same family crest and coats of arms. All right? So it goes back to a time and an era of where the so-called name was being used to refer to a so-called people. All right? That's not spooks. That's based off some folklore or some myth that he cannot prove. All right? Say, well, he gonna say, well, that's just a house of names. They don't know what they talk about. Well, let's go to another source. I choose Wikipedia because Wikipedia has italic source where you can just hit it and find the source within that. So let's go to what was his name? They said Nigel de Albany being enfeoffed by the crown in the manor of Egmonton, not conferred upon him by Robert de Ville. We're gonna look at these two names, Robert de Ville or Robert the Devil and Nigel de Albany. All right. We're going to look at these two names. Let's look at negro first. Everybody see that? Miguel de Urbini was a Norman lord and English baron who was the son of Roger de Urbini of Amice or Advice de Marlborough from the House of Marlborough. All right. While his father was an avid supporter of Henry I, the King of England. All right. The son of William the Conqueror, the bastard. The son of who? Robert the Devil. Anybody ever heard of Robert the Devil? Because it just said it right here. Robert DeVille. Right there. All right, so let's check him out. Robert the Devil. Robert the Devil is a legend of medieval origin about a Norman knight who discovers he is the son of Satan. His mother, despairing of heaven's aid in order to ordain a son, had asked for help from the devil. Robert's satanic instinct propels him into a violent, sinful life, but his eventual victory overcomes them to achieve repentance. There was once a Duchess of Normandy who was tormented with desire to have a children, and yet could have none. Weary of recommending herself to God, who will not listen to her, she betakes herself to the devil, and her wish is speedily satisfied. A son is born to her, a veritable firebrand. As an infant, he bites his nurse and tears out her hair. As a lad, he knifes his teacher. At the age of 20, he becomes a bandit chief. He is dubbed knight and believes that thus the wicked instinct raging within him may be overcome. But thereafter, he is worse than he was before. No one surpasses him in strength, heart cell, or in courage. An attorney, and in attorney, he overthrows and slays dirty opponents. Then he goes roaming about the world. Then he returns to his native land and begins once more to play the bandit, robbing, burning, murdering, ravishing. One day, after cutting the throats of all the nuns of certain abbeys, he remembers his mother and goes in search of her. Soon as they spy him, the servants take to their heels, scattering in all directions. Not one tarries to ask him whence he comes or what he desires. Then, for the first time in his life, Robert is astounded at the horror when he inspires in his fellow beings for the first time. He becomes conscious of his own monstrous wickedness, and he feels how his heart is pierced by the sharp tooth of remorse. By what he is wickeder, but why is he wickeder than the other men? Question. Why was he born thus? Question. Who made him what he is? Question. A ardent longing seizes him to unravel this mystery. He hastens to his mother, and with drawn sword, he adjures her to unveil to him the secrets of his birth. Learning this, Jacob and Esau, same story. Learning this, he becomes frantic with terror, shame, and grief. But his sturdy nature is not weakened. He does not yield to despair. Instead, the hope of the laborious redemption, a marvelous victory, urges and spurs on his proud spirit. He will learn to conquer hell and subdue himself, to thwart the designs of that accursed fiend who created him to serve his own ends, who had made of him a docile instrument at the destruction of sin. And he made no delay. He goes to Rome, casts himself at the feet of the Pope, make confession to a holy hermit, submit himself to the harshest kinds of penance, and swears that henceforth he will taste no food that he has not first wrested from the jaws of a dog. On 2 separate occasions, when Rome was besieged by Saracens, he fights incognito for the emperor and gains the victory for Christians. Recognized at last, he refuses all rewards and honors the imperial crown. Even the monarch's own daughter goes away to dwell with his hermit, and in the wilderness he dies a saint, blessed by God and men. In other accounts, he finally weds a beautiful princess who is deeply in love with him. All right, literal history. Let's go to historic history. Everybody see this? Various attempts have been made to identify Robert with historical individuals, generally a Norman aristocrat of the 11th century. F.J. Furnivall, following earlier writers, argued that Robert, Duke of Normandy, was the source of the story, writing that the original of Robert the Devil was Robert's father of William the Conqueror and the 6th Duke of Normandy. Did y'all hear that? Did everyone hear that? Should I read it again for you? I guess I will. Various attempts have been made to identify Robert with historical individuals, generally a Norman aristocrat of the 11th century. F.J. Furnivall, following earlier writers, argued that Robert, Duke of Normandy, was the source of the story, writing that the original of Robert the Devil was Robert, father of William the Conqueror and the 6th Duke of Normandy. Part of the legends about him have been transferred to different persons. Robert, King of Sicily and of Jerusalem, from one of the Frankish dynasties who descended from the Plantagenet house, Duke of Apulia, etc., who tried to make peace with Edward III and the French king, and whose Froissarts and others tales of us. You know, Edward III is the son of Henry III. All right? Edward III. Edward III is the son of Edward II. All right? Right there. And he was of the Plantagenet house. All right? Of the Plantagenet house. But you must understand history to understand the story of who represents the devil and who represents God. All right? There you have it. All right. All right. Also, I want to make note to what we talked about the brother yesterday, saying he descended down from St. Nicholas. All right, let me just clear that up real quick before I move forward. Matter of fact, I did cover it, so we're gonna move forward. I don't want to waste no time. All right. We know that the Virginia statute of Religious Freedom was drafted by Thomas Jefferson, all right, and presented to the Virginia Assembly, which was the lower house, which was the House of Burgesses, to disestablish the Church of England and Virginia and grant religious freedom to Jews, Muslims, and Hindus. All right. Prior to that, there was a church state. All right. A fusion of power by king and parliament. Okay. King and parliament. So we know that this is not the English Church of England. They said the Church of England. And if the Church of England is in over here in what we call North America, then that should normally raise the flag in your conscience about then this must have been England. All right, going all the way back to Henry VIII. All right, and even before that, all right, back to the Gregorian mission to have all those Anglo-Saxon English descendants to follow what we call the Christian religion. All right, all the way back in 597. But you can exclude that territory over there, what they call the continent. They're talking about right here in Virginia. We know Virginia was the first colony set up by those monarchs from the House of Stuart, who were the kings of what they now call Great Britain during the unification of the Parliament of England, Ireland, and Scotland. It's very important. Why? Because Dred Scott is going to clear everything up for us. All right? That case is going to clear everything up for us. All right? So the Church of England, and we know the Church of England and all the property that belongs to the church, and we know all the property belonged to the church was crown land. All the land. We ain't talking about the building, the fixtures. We're talking about the land belongs to the church, which is inseparable. All right? So anything that you donate to the church is a dead pledge. All right? This is why they separated the Church of England from the state. We know that the Church of England separated from the Roman Catholic Church at the time of Henry VIII. And we know that the Church of England was separated from the Roman Catholic Church by the time of Henry VIII, which goes back to the Church of England back in the time of Pope Gregory I, when all the Anglo-Saxons converted to Christianity, when they weren't called the Church of England. It was called the English Church back in 597. Because as Ethelbert of Kent stated, that Christianity was not known in the British Isles. All right. We talked about that in previous lectures. I'm not going to go through that right now. So we know that in the 9th, 10th century, King Edgar the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of, reformed the monarchistics and moved all the secular clergy of the secular clergy of the Roman Catholic churches that imposed their religion on what we call the English, because we know that the religion of the Roman Catholic Church was that of what we call Arianism. All right? And we know Arianism is the religion or the custom that goes back to what we call the Aryans, going back to Cyrus, who was going back to what we call the Persian Empire, because our Aryan, Iran are synonymous. All right? Watch my last lecture. I'll prove that. All right? So we know the Church of England, when we were enslaved, the English subjects, all right, were redeemed in the 10th century by the English Benedictine reform, all right? And we know that those Aryans or Iranians are nothing more than the Northmen or Nordic tribes that were under the jurisdiction of Pope Gregory I, which are the Frankists, the Romans, the Visigoths, and every other Nordic tribe that came over here, who made up those elite families here in North America that were considered citizens by way of the Naturalization Act of 1790. All right? All right? Not based off the legislative authority that was governed at that time by the king, which protected the king's subject, all right, under the English government, because it was the English government that were functioning at the time of the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. All right? But there was a different church operating on English land at the time of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which was the Church of England established by Pope Gregory I. So that means that that church that was operating was on the land of England, or the land of the Angles, going all the way back to 597. All right? You must understand that, Brother Seti. All right? Yes, Brother Seti. Aryan name. Aryan, also spelled Aryan, Aryan, or Aryan, is a given name or surname that is popular in India and in Iran. You always talk about India, Iran, make reference to the continent over there called India and Asia, but never make the connection here. Now it's time to do that. The name Aryan is derived from the Sanskrit Aryan, meaning assumed to be noble, because everybody assumes to call themselves noble, superior, or highborn. In the Anglo spirit, though, the name has negative connotations to many due to the Nazi racial theories, which goes back all the way back to the so-called Jews, all right, the Hebrews, about the superiority of the so-called Aryan race and modern uses of the term, all right, by white supremacists, which are the founding fathers now call themselves free white person, all right, which if we go here, Where's it at? We're just revisiting for all those who visit for the first time. Thomas Jefferson says right here. Listen to what's being said, y'all. Dark Ages, all right? The Dark Ages, all right? And we're talking about slaves and the enslaver, all right? Slaves and the enslavers, all right? We know the devil was the slaver and God was those who freed those who were enslaved, all right? Or those who freed us was under the auspices of God's authority, such as Jeremiah and Isaiah, all right? As well as Cyprus, which we're talking about right now, which was a Persian king who so-called delivered the so-called Israelites from the hands of the so-called Babylonians, which causes confusion in the first place, all right? We must understand that. But yet, the confusion, the freedom that Cyrus granted to the Israelites assumed in that timeline, the abstract story, the founding fathers didn't do. And instead, they didn't follow the practice of Cyrus, even though Cyrus mentioned in what they call the Cyropedia, whatever the term they created. They chose to follow the practice of keeping those enslaved. All right. It says right here. Let me make sure you see it. Long before the ancestors of Americans and Europeans emerged from the Dark Ages, their older cousins established a state further east, which they named after themselves Ariana. All right, goes back to that surname. All right, denoting to the land of the Aryans. In the course of time, the term Ariana underwent phonic changes to involve today Iran. All right, Aryan has no physical connotations prior to its readoption in Europe as a self-designation in the 19th century and meant simply noble. Pretty much what you read in Wikipedia. All right. In India, ancient cousins of the Iranians also refer to themselves as Aryan, a sacred meaning noble. And the language of their distinct cousins in the far west Europe, Old Irish is cognate as Ari, likewise meant noble. All right. And the in due course, in southern and warmer regions of Ariana, its regions are called Parsa, being today Persia, arose through Cyrus, who created with his successors for over 2 centuries. All right. Cyrus fulfilled the functions of anointed of the Lord, Isaiah 45, which you was talking about today. All right, Brother Seti. A rendition of English of Hebrew Messiah, or Messiah. All right, which we know means the anointed. So you are not the anointed one, all right? You are not the anointed one. Let's continue on. All right, we know that, as we said, the Virginia statute disestablished the Church of England, right? The reason why they disestablished the Church of England because this is the Church of England who enslaved the English subjects. All right, going back to the Augustinian Gregorian mission by Pope Gregory I, which was one of the leaders of the what we call the list of popes. All right, created and backdated by Pope Boniface XIII. All right, so the Church of England once and for all was here in what we call Virginia, which was the first colony established by the King James, a Scottish king. All right, of Great Britain. All right, it was called Great Britain, or what we call the British America, or the British Empire. All right, before the 13 colonies even came up with the idea to call it America, because America goes back to the time of discovery, the time of conquest, which we call in law dealing with property or real estate or land registration. It was called prescription of sovereignty. Somebody acting as a sovereign and is not being attested or challenged until now. All right? Until now. You can't do that, Brother Seti. Nor can Sarwan Student Seti, nor can that other brother, nor any government or any official in any official capacity do. All right? Because you're not an heir. You're not the firstborn based upon that surname. If you are and you want to contest it, you better have SON on the back of it. That you better do. All right, let's move forward. So we know in the English Spinach Down reform, let's just go here right quick. Forget the founding fathers. All right here. Nordic racial identity shaped the Immigration Act of 1924, signed into law by President Calvin Coolidge. All right, uh, who declared America must remain American. A few years earlier, in an article in Good Housekeeping, Coolidge had called for the United States to remain not only a majority white, but also majority Northern. Biological laws Biological laws tell us that certain divergent people will not mix or blend. The Nordics propagate themselves successfully with other races. The outcome shows deterioration on both sides. The Nazis' genocidal and eugenic policies discredited the racism, Nordicism, and the anti-Semitism shared by much of the Anglo-American elite. After 1945, the idea that real Americans were the heirs of ancient Aryan or Indo-European tribes from Eurasia steppes by way of the force of Germany and the British Isles was dumped and replaced by a new, more universalist definition of American nationality. To be American was now equated with having a deep personal belief in the ideals of the founding, as under the Articles of Confederation. All right, let's move forward. You see here, as I just said, the English Benedictine reform of the English Church, not the Church of England. The English Church reform was a result of what the Church of England imposing their Christianity on the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, who we saying we are, okay? So it's right there, all right? So without further ado, I told you I'm not gonna hold you long. Let's go to the Dred Scott case, all right? Because we know that surnames goes back to the Norman conquest, all right? Prior to the Norman conquest, the only surnames you had were the surnames dealing with the family. And at that time, they were called Ethling. All right. Ethling means noble. And Ing means belonging to the noble family. Etheling. All right. King Ethelred. King Ethelred. King Edgar. All these were a part of the Ethling family. All right. Contrast to other people who identify with what they assume to be noble. All right. But we're dealing with the Church of England, all right, versus the English Church of England, which we're saying we are in lieu of the property that belongs to the English Church as defined by what we call the Sesquiquet, all right? But we ain't going to go through that because I told you I'm not going to hold you long. We know that crown land is intel. We know intel land, it means it's left for an heir. Fee simple is land that fiefed out, called the Sesquiquet, to anybody, all right? To anybody, all right? So let's go to this Dred Scott case again and show you who the real slave masters are, all right? Who the real slave masters are. I highlighted it for you. The public law of Europe formally permitted a master to reclaim his bondsman with a limited period wherever he could find him. And once of the capillaries of Charlemagne abolishes the rules of prescription. You know, prescription is the right to be able to use property, all right, without owning it. It's called easement by prescription, all right, which is subject to encumbrances as a result of reversion or remandment of estates when there's a cloud of the title or put on it in regards to the proper owner of the said property in question. He directs that, and we're talking about land as well as chattel property, which is the case in this manner dealing with Dred Scott. He was considered mortgage, chattel mortgage. He could be sold. All right, they were considered a part of the chattel. They came along as a part of the land and used as a medium on the land for transactions or trade. All right, so everybody pull this up. All right, pull it up. All right. This for those who have a little bit trouble keeping up. All right. I made this easy for you today. The public law of Europe formerly permitted a master, all right, to reclaim his bondsman within a limited period wherever he could find him. And one of the capillaries of Charlemagne, all right, abolishes the rule of prescription, which is the pretty much like the statute of limitation. He directs that wherever within the bounds of Italy, either a runaway slave of the king or the church or of any other man should be found by his master, he should be restored without any bar or prescription of years. Yet upon the provisions that the master might be be a Frank or German or of any other nation foreign, but if he be a Lombard or Roman, he shall inquire and receive his slaves by that law which had been established by ancient times among them, without referring for precedents abroad or to the colonial history for similar incidents. The history of the Confederation and the Union affords evidence to attest the existence of this ancient law about the returning of a bondsman property. All right? Without referring to case law, without referring to historical records, colonial history, all right, without referring to uh, matters abroad on other continents, they can attest to the fact that property was subject to the owner of the property. All right, such is the case as in the Church of England. That's why you had the English Time Reform. So let's associate the Church of England and those who made up the Church of England under the authority of those who was running the Church of England in regards to who they was going to subjectize. All right? Very important for you to understand that, because we're going to go back to where? The Virginia colonies, or the Virginia Statutes of Religious Freedom. Because the church had slaves. Church of England had slaves. This is what they're running from. And Dred Scott gonna tell you that. Under the Articles of Confederation, the Church of England read that was the authority that they were subject to, as under the apostolic prefect, which was John Carroll. They had slaves. Your founding fathers were slave traders. All right? And the authority in which they did the slave trading was the Church of England. Let's see. The Church of England is the established Christian Church of England, and it traces history to the Christian Church recorded as existing in the Roman province of Britain by the 3rd century to the 6th century Gregorian mission to Kent, led by Augustine of Canterbury. So I mean, all the way from over there in what they call the British Isles, all the way over here to North America, because the Church of England was disestablished here. All right, here. English church renounced papal authority going back to Kent. All right? Going back all the way back to Kent. Kent Ethelbert, who married Bertha, who was a Moravian who never claimed to be descendant of God, like the Anglo-Saxons. All right? We include the Saxons in there. We know when you say English, it does not include the Saxons because it make reference to those of the Angles. All right? Or the Anglo. Because we're in the Anglosphere. And we know Anglosphere, and the origin of the name Anglo comes from Norman. Matter of fact, let's just pull that up because that's a great reference. Because when you're considering the Northern European continent, which is considered Normandy, you have to consider William the Conqueror's invasion of Normandy, all right? And when it was succeeded to the Plantagenet crown to Henry II, the son of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou. Yes, all that land was succeeded to the Plantagenet crown, who also controlled the English throne, which was governing territories over here. All right? We must understand that. Anglo history and family crest and coat of arms. France and England. The Anglo family name is derived from the coastal landscape of medieval France, known as Normandy. The name originated with the early members who was a Norman resident of English extraction. The name Langlos refers to the Angles, a race who once inhabited England, and after whom the country is named. All right, there you see it. All right. So you can find it in Angles, Angels, Angelus, Angelos, etc. All right. So there's no confusion. Let's go back to Dred Scott. Oh yeah, my bad. Church of England. Led by the Gregorian mission to Kent, led by Augustine of Canterbury. Canterbury was authorized by Pope Gregory I. All right. The only way we're gonna get there is to hit Augustine. Augustine of Canterbury, one of the doctors of the church. All right. Augustine of Canterbury. Okay. Everybody see that? Seti, do you see this? By the way, Seth is a Coptic name. It's a Greek name. All right. Augustine of Canterbury was a Christian monk who became the first Archbishop of Canterbury in the year 597. He considered the apostle to the English and the founding figure of the Church of England. We don't consider him. All right. Augustine was the prior of the monastery in Rome when Pope Gregory the Great chose him to lead the mission to convert the Anglo-Saxon to this Christianity. All right. Pope Gregory the Great. Right here. The realignment of barbarian allegiance to Rome from the Arian Christian elite alliances shaped medieval Europe. Gregory saw Franks, Lombards, and the Visigoths aligned with Rome and religion. He also combated the dynastics, hearsay, a popular particularly in North Africa at the time. Okay? So we see Pope Gregory aligned all the Arian, those who are of Arian heritage who followed the Arian Christian concept of Christianity. All right. Why? Because Arian is the same word. You go back to the surname Arian. Who are over here in the Anglo spirit. Arian and Anglo is not synonymous. We know that by now. All right. But Arian and Ariana and all those terms or Iran are synonymous, or India is synonymous. This is where this India or Indian stuff come from. All right? Those are foreigners. They're just merely occupants on the land. All right? So as we can see, when we said that Pope Gregory I, he spoke of the Franks, the Lombards, the Visigoths, and the Roman aligned with the Rome in religion, all right, which was Arianism. All right? So let's go back to the case law. He's making reference to the same group. Right there. Same group. So United States and the colonial government don't need presidents, don't need a colonial history, nor use any other reference across seas to attest to this ancient practice in regards to returning property back to its owner. All right, let's move further. All this is going to be drawn from this Dred Scott case. The ordinance of William the Conqueror. Do y'all hear this? You got a case here in North America. We know that England was here, but the Church of England was here. We know that the Church of England goes back to us being enslaved and forced to a religion that's not our own, instead of worshiping our own saints and martyrs, all right, who died for the cause. On this land, which is also associated with this territory, that territory over there called Kent, all right? And they associated the English tradition with what was going over here because we know that at the time of Scottish independence, that we were warned with not just the Scottish king, but with the Frankish kings, all right, which were subject to the Roman Catholic teaching, all right, going back to Spain and France here in the western part of what we call America. You know your history. The ordinance of William the Conqueror that a resident of any of the surveilled population of England for a year and a day without being claimed, and a city, borough, wall, town, or castle of the king should entitle them to perpetual liberty and a specimen of these laws. So even in the time of William the Conqueror, there was no slavery, all right? According to this case law. Because William the Conqueror followed the laws that were set down by Edward the Confessor, who was a king of Wessex. His daughter was Margaret of Scotland, and Margaret of Scotland married Godfrey V Canavan Jew, the son of Fulk, the ruler of Jerusalem. So England and Jerusalem was connected. And Jerusalem and England was connected, and England and North America was connected, so that means that this was all Jerusalem. And we know that it must have been Jerusalem because England functioned off the crown, and the crown represents crown land by the king who personifies the crown. And we know all the property on the crown land is intel, which means it can't be sold. All right. This is why New Jersey is the crown, because the crown was operating here in 1776. All right, called the Provincial Council. Let's see. How long y'all gonna run from this truth? You see this, SETI. Somebody go show SETI this. All right? The Provincial Council was established in 1702 upon surrender of the proprietors who got those fee simple grants. All right? Whether you got it on the tourist title or by what we call a title insurance company, they all are subject to this allodial title that was under the crown. All right? And the only way you got it is because the heirs don't know who the hell they are. All right, so automatically it falls in what we call it streets to the so-called assumed sovereign under prescription of sovereignty until the true sovereign comes in and put a lien on it by way of acquiring the title, which is the case in point. This is what's being done. So you got to prove who you are on my land. I didn't create the chessboard. Neither did you. But you got to learn how to play the game, right? Not just be a pawn. The Provincial Council was established in 1702 upon surrender by the proprietors of East Jersey and those of West Jersey of the right of the government to the Queen Anne. All right? That's the Queen. All right? Anne's government united the two colonies as a province of New Jersey, as a royal colony established a new system of government. What type of government? A fusion of government. Not a separation of church and state. All right? Not a separation of power. When you separated church and state, that was a separation of church and power. You severed the head of the king. The instructions from Queen Anne to Viscount Cornbury to the first world governor of New Jersey, all right, outlined a fusion of power system which allowed for an overlap of the executive, legislative, and judicial authority and provided for bicameral legislature consisting of the council and the general assembly. You see it right there. Length of the term, forever. Forever. Okay? Let's go back to the case law. The earliest publicists who had discussed this subject emboldened a jurist of the 16th century whose work was quoted in the early discussion of the courts in France and England on the subject. He says, in France, although there were some remnants of old servitude, yet it is not lawful here to make a slave or to buy anyone of other instruments as a slave or a stranger, so soon as they set foot within France becomes frank and free. Okay? So you was in France, you were free. If you were in England, you were free, and in times of William the Conqueror, because all slaves didn't carry that stipulation as being beaten and mutilated and um, tormented, etc. It didn't mean that. Everybody are slaves if you're going to work, not at your own will. And it ain't at your own will because you need a check. All right? You need some type of compensation, which is not compensation because they only gave you a promise they would compensate you. All right? That's what the instrument that you bear in your hand as the bearer of the instrument. I don't give a darn if it's a dollar bill or a negotiable instrument, since it's a draft. Either or makes no difference. We'll go further. Right here. The question to be raised with the opinion of Lord Manfield, therefore, is not in respect to the incongruity of the two systems, but whether slavery was absolutely contrary to the laws of England. For if it was so, clearly the American laws could not operate where? In England. That's why they separated or disbanded the Church of England. All right? Because Henry VIII took over the English Church of England as a result of those who made up the Church of England warred amongst themselves, such as what we call the War of the Roses. All right? The First and the Second 100-Year War. How many of y'all know about that? All right? It says, but whether slavery was absolutely contrary to the laws of England, for if it was so, clearly the American law could not operate there. Historical research ascertains that a date of the conquest, the rural population of England was generally in a severe condition. Now, under various names, Isaiah 45, 4, Brother Seti. If you ain't got a certain name from God, all right, not no spook, but whoever considered himself to be Lord at that time, whoever was the king governed that land at that time, all right? You at some place and point in time, you on some land like you are now. And you're not the sovereign there. You're not superior there. Why? Because you are subject to the encumbrances like everyone is until someone free you from that servitude. And the only one that can do that is the king. Because when the land is allodial and there's no heir, the king is next of kin. Parsons, the Attorney General for the state, versus Standard Oil Company. We talked about that yesterday, but I'll close out on that. All right? It says, historical research ascertains that at the date of the Norman conquest, The rural population of England were generally in servitude condition or severe condition, and various names denoting slight barriers to the condition. All right, because the names that we had denoted to occupation. All right, why you think you ain't using your name? All right, what's your family name, Seti? What is it, brother? All those on side of the TV. What's your family name? If you got a family name, then it must have son, patronymic. If you do have a family name, the family name was given to you as a result of the status of the family or the origin of the family and the status of the result of the status of the origin of the family. All right. It says here, and under various names and noting slight variances and conditions, as I just stated, they were sold with the land like cattle. That's called chattel mortgage. All right. And were a part of the living money. Traces of the existence of African slaves are to be found in the early chronicles. What did they just say in this case? It says that the founding fathers or the Congress didn't need any records from across the continent, across seas, or any historical and relative to the colonies to establish that a slave was something that of a bondman, going back to this ancient law, going back to here to Richard the First, Richard the Second, and Henry the Eighth. All right, Richard II and Henry VIII. And it says here, Richard II and Henry VIII refused to adopt a general law, i.e., a legal instrument that you can call upon at any time to emancipate you from the encumbrances that you, Seti, are subject to right now. Act of emancipation by the last name monarch. You hear that? Last name monarch. I know y'all assuming to be the last name monarch, but we're going based off that surname monarch, and it's by Elizabeth are preserved. All right. Elizabeth and Henry II, who took over church land, took over the property that belongs to the church. Why are they going to say it? The African slave trade has been carried on under the unbound protection of the crown. All right. The crown is just the person who's sitting in that seat under the crown called corporation sole. And in that case, it was the Roman Catholic Church until they broke away at the English Reformation by Henry VIII. For nearly 2 centuries, when the case of Somerset was heard and no motion for its suppression had ever been submitted to Parliament. While it was forced upon them to maintain an unwilling colonies by the Parliament of the Crown of England at that moment, 15,000 Negro slaves were then living in the island. You hear that? Did y'all hear that? Remember that, because I'm about to go take you somewhere y'all don't want to go. All right? Y'all want the truth? I'm going to give you the truth. 15,000, yes, colored people called Negroes, slaves, were then living in that island, the British Isles, where they had been introduced under the counsel of the most illustrious jurists. Who are the jurists? Of the realm. And such slaves had been publicly sold for near a century in the markets of London. In the northern part of the kingdom of Great Britain, there existed a class from 30,000 to 40,000 persons, of whom Parliament said in 1775. All right? Many colliers, coheavers, salters are the state of slavery or bondage, bound to the colliers and salt workers where they work for life, transferable with the colliers and the salt workers when their original masters had no use for them. All right? Transfer by way of a legal instrument, i.e., a deed. All right? We call that a birth certificate. No statutes from the oh, man. Sorry about that. No statutes from the conquest till King George III have been passed upon the subject of personal slavery, chattel slavery. All right? SETI, this is what you need to be dealing with. These facts have led to the most eminent civilian of England to question the accuracies of the judgments by these jurists and to insulate that in this judgment of the offense of the ampliare jurisdictionem by a private authority was committed by an eminent magistrate who pronounced it. All right? De facto judges. This is how it was done. Let's go here. It is conceded in the decision of this court that Congress may secure the rights of the United States and the public domain. Now they're talking about not just chattel property or personal property, which the so-called Negroes, colored people were actually a part of. Hence the word colored people. Colored people. Very important because this case switches back from slavery to ownership of property. All right? Because it all has a lot to do with it, going all the way back to the Norman conquest, as they continue to mention. All right? All involving the crown and crown land, because the Norman conquest and the Normans who invaded in that conquest were sitting on the crown, not of Scotland, not of Ireland, but of England. Because we know Anglo under the family crest and coats of arms associated with or synonymous with Angles, English, Anglo, etc. All right? Go back, all those who really want to get a fair conception, go back to the Battle of Bunningburgh with Ashleton against the Northern Vikings of Scotland under the kingdom of Alba Constantine II. All right? Constantine II. It said, it is conceded in the decisions of this court that Congress may secure the rights of the United States and the public domain, provide for sale or lease of any part of it, and establish the validity of the title of the purchaser and may organize territorial government with the powers of the legislation. So if you're talking about this type of leasing or selling of land contract to the public domain, that which you cannot sell because the public domain, and our understanding is part of the king's property. All right, it's part of the crown's property because the king represents the crown by way of corporation soul, as well as the statutes of mortmain, meaning that it's all dead, is all a pledge to the crown because the property cannot separate from the crown. All right. But the recognition of the plenary powers of Congress to dispose of the public domain, they ain't talking about that which you can sell or lease or by way of what we call prescription of easement, which is a non-possessory use and property that you don't own, which is the case in 99% of the matters concerning ownership of property involving the citizens today. All right? None of you own your property. All right? Because none of you own your land. All right? None of you own your land. But the recognition of plenary power in Congress, whether it's the state or federal, in this case, they're talking about the federal, to dispose of the public domain or to organize the government over it, does that imply a corresponding authority to determine the eternal polity or to adjust the domestic relations of the persons who may lawfully inhabit the territory in which it is situated? All right? That's why I had to go over this again with y'all to raise your degree in understanding and comprehension. A supreme power to make needful rules respecting the public domain, not that which you lease and sell, all right, under the eminent domain powers of the state, which is we call police powers, and police powers arises when there is abandoned property that has acceded to the state as a result of there being no heirs and result of what we call interstate. If those who understand property law, all right? So I know for a fact that judges and attorneys and what you call them, realtors are watching this as a way out. I'm not giving you a way out. You're bound by the law. You don't have a clear chain of title. I'm coming back in the clouds and removing the clouds from the title. All right? Because I'm standing on the land because I claim the land because it's mine. All right? It is mine and is left for my heirs under a public trust, which you divvied out, which you call a cess to crave, which is nothing more than a parcel of land, which you call a fiefment in it. Right? A supreme power to make needful rules respecting the public domain, and a similar power of framing laws to operate upon persons and things. All right? That means there's no quiet possession and there's no free encumbrances. All right? There's probably quiet enjoyment, but no free encumbrances required in freedom from encumbrances as a result of no quiet possession. All right? These are facts I'm telling you. Why is this? A supreme power to make needful rules respecting the public domain, protecting the public domain, or keeping it away from it being what they call subjugated, all right? And a similar power of framing laws to operate upon personal things within the territorial limits where it lies are distinguished by broad lines of demarcation and American history. So you must understand the history of this land, not the people of the land, because the people of the land are not the people of the land, according to this case law we're reading. All right? Americans are not the people of this land. The Americans are not the sovereign of these lands. The people of this land identify themselves are Americans, are nothing more than the 13 colonies who allowed to come here under what they call Elizabeth's religious settlement, going back to the Settlement Act of 1702, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. 1704, 1702. This court has assisted us to define them in Johnson versus McIntosh, Martin versus Waddell. All right, you can see those cases. All right, they say, this is legal citations. All right, according to the theory of British Constitution, all vacant land are vested in the crown. All right, no question about it. All vacant land are vested in the crown. All land is vacant as a result of it being free from any fixtures. All right, because if you claim it was vacant when you got here, that's how it should be here when the king come back. Which of case is not the case, because we know we were already here before you got here, when things was already in place and running before you got here. All right, these are facts. All right, you just tore it down. According to the theory of British Constitution, all vacant land are vested in the crown, and the exclusive power to grant them is admitted to reside in the crown as a branch of the royal prerogative. All right? All land we hold were originally granted by the crown, and the establishment of the royal government, all right, not a weak central government as under the Articles of Confederation, but as a royal government, as in what we call the new Provincial Council of New Jersey. All right? Yes, the Provincial Council of New Jersey. That was the crown. That was the English throne. That was the seat of government. All right? Going all the way back to King Edward's reformation of the English church from the Church of England, which was reinstituted when they colonized here and enslaved those who were descendants of the territorial extent that was subject to crown intel land. All right, which is what they call territorials under the king's what they call radical title. Look that term up. All lands we hold were originally, this is confession, y'all. All right, this is their confession. All the lands we hold were originally, all right, this means reform. This is what King Edgar was trying to do. All right, this is what I'm trying to do at the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful. I'm trying to reform the lands back to the crown, to establish the royal government that was under the crown, which has never been considered as impairing the rights to grant land within the charter limits of such colonies. Why? Because all those rights that were given to the proprietary were surrendered back to the crown in 1702 under the crown. All right, it was taken by those who took over the crown in 1776. All right, and the British Parliament did claim a supremacy of legislation coextensive with the absoluteness of the dominions of the sovereign over the crown lands. All right, over the crown lands. Dred Scott, Chief Justice, whatever that guy was, who were the justices who were reviewing this case and giving their opinion, their statement of reason, clearly shows and proves that these lands were crown land. When I say these lands, I'm talking about the whole continent of what you call North America as a result of the Treaty of Paris of 1763 and 1783. So that means the 1787 is null and void, as well as all those made after that are null and void as a result of Article 10 of the Constitution, which says that all those treaties made under the Articles of Confederation are the supreme law of the land. And every officer and official are bound by that supreme law of the land. And the supreme law of the land was the law that was created by the legislative that was under King and Parliament that was surrendered by the individual colonies to those which now became the United States, was nothing more called the Articles of Confederation, which became dangerous once this discussion came before a court of law, which is the case in point. All right. I ain't saying that. This case is going to say it. All right. Let's read on. The American doctrine to the contrary is embodied in the two-brief resolution in the Pennsylvania in 1774 that the inhabitants of these colonies are entitled to the same rights and liberties with the colonies that the subjects born in England are entitled within this rim. So this rim was a part of the empire of what we call Albion. All right? Because we know it must have been Albion if the Scottish kings called it Alba, which is the Gaelic form from the Latin form of Scotia. And we know Scotia is the land of the Scots, which Dred Scott was a slave by the Scottish kings, because the word Scot or the surname Scott derives from land of the Scots. It goes back to Scotland. All right? These are facts. What is crown land? At the British Parliament did claim supremacy of legislation coextensive with the absoluteness of the dominion of the sovereign over the crown land. What is the crown lands? Crown land, also known as the royal domain, is a territory area belonging to the monarch. You hear that? Belonging to the monarch, not to everybody, but to one person, the monarch, who personifies the crown. We all know what the word personified means. Means to, let's just define it. Brother Sadie, since you're saying that God's son didn't exist, all right, let's define personify. Ooh. Oh, Marcel. Represent a quality, a concept by a figure in human form. That's incarnation, right? Attribute a personal nature of human characteristics to something not human. All right? Represent or embody a quality, concept in physical form. So I'm saying I'm a reincarnation or the personification or the incorporation of the laws of the King Edgar the Peaceful, who reformed the English Church of England from the grasp of the Church of England that was done at the time of the Gregorian mission and has been in progress ever since the Statutes of the Religious Freedom was instituted back in the time of so-called Thomas Jefferson, who so-called bears the so-called surname. but he didn't free us. He enslaved us, all right, by separating the church from the state that allowed them to be in a position to be able to use the property of the state through what we call fee and simple and not fee and tell. Because all crown land is what? Intel, not fee and simple. How we know it? Let's go back to it. Do you know this, brother Sinetta? I mean, parts of Sarah Seti? Because you need to humble yourself. Crown land, also known as road domain, is territory area belonging to the monarch who personifies the crown here on earth. All right? Here on earth, and is equivalent to an entail estate. All right? So we're talking about land, entail. In English common law, fee-tail or entail, or in Scottish law, it's called telesai, is a form of trust established by a deed of settlement. When they settle a land, that's their so-called deed by what they call eminent domain, all right, by squatting on it, or by what they call prescription of sovereignty by saving that the land belongs to you and it not being tested, all right? That involves what we call chess, all right? Being able to fight for the land, all right? Not but bows and arrows and things of that nature, because of course we would lose. So this is a quiet war now. All right, the method of fighting now is mental. All right, I'm learning how to move on this land and acquiring the tools you need to be able to move in this fight on this land. And that tool that you need to fight on the land is law. All right, the law of the land, not law of the air, like y'all using right now today, or land of the water, which the admiralty which they were using to keep us bound. All right, but the law of the land. And English common law, fee-tail, entail, in Scottish law, is a form of trust established by a deed of settlement that restricts the sale of an inheritance of an estate and real property and prevents the property from being sold. All right, devised by will or otherwise alienated by the tenant in possession, and instead causes it to pass automatically by operation of law to an heir determined by the settlement date. We know operation of law is by a statute of disposition. All right. The settlement deed is a legal instrument, which is the operation of law, i.e., the statute. All right. The statute, right? Because a legal instrument such as a deed is only shows conveyance that assumed to be a clear chain of title when you're talking about land. But in the case of a deed in regards to real property, they ain't talking about land. They're talking about the property sitting on the land, which is why they call real estate. All right, which is nothing more than called a bundle of rights. These are facts, y'all. Let's go on. Fee-tail deeds are in contrast to fee simple deeds. You hear that? Totally different. All you have is fee simple. All right. Some have a warranty, some do not. Fee-tail deeds are in contrast to fee simple deeds, possessors of which have an unrestricted title to property and are empowered to bequest or dispose of it as they wish, although it may be subject to the allodial title of the monarch. You hear that? Or of a governing body with the powers of eminent domain. That's called police powers. So if ain't no monarch, then guess what? Y'all are subject to eminent domain, police powers, which means that your property are automatically bound by encumbrances, taxes, fees, all right, zoning, etc. All right, encumbrances on from the private domain, which involves all that within the public trust. All right, you must understand what's going on. All right, so it says the crown land is intel land that is personified by the crown. All right, let's go back to the case law. We're going to stay right here. So that means that the colonies, right, the 13 colonies, all right, it says that the inhabitants of these colonies are assumed to be entitled to this. See, this is what the war was all about, because the colonies thought that they had the rights of the English subjects that were on the land, subject to the rights of the English government that was being occupied by way of an interregnum, by way of British monarchs sitting on it, of Scottish descent. That's called an interregnum, where the demise can't transfer. That's why they say, long live the king. All right? Because there's a transfer of office. There is no interregnum. Why you think a president moved from office into another office? That's called the demise. It's de facto, I might add, because someone must be sitting in that office. All right? The power assumed by Parliament to bind the people of these colonies by statute in all cases whatsoever is unconstitutional and therefore the source of this unhappy difficulty. They know that the statute's disposition in regards to the land was governed by those that the land belonged to. This is the reason why they broke away from the crown land and created their own statutes and created ways to formulate it to fit their description of how their government will be run. All right? Let's move forward. Let's go here, 411. Y'all better listen to what's going on. SETI, I mean, you're a great teacher, bro. You know what I'm saying? You got great fire. You know, I love for you to come on home. You know what I'm saying? And take your place amongst the affairs of your people. Same with all the other ones. You know, don't be ashamed. You know, Taj Tariq, you know, all of you can come on home. You know what I'm saying? You know, a house divided cannot stand. You know what I'm saying? But we know, based off the law, this house was created to not fall, even if you're not in it. All right? So listen, and this is the Norman lawyer is about to tell you. All right? We were never the slaves, the English. All right? Based off our nation, our country, and our policy that existed based off our country that goes back to time immemorial. Hold on, hold that thought. The Norman lawyers of William the Conqueror. All right, so we're talking about lawyers of William the Conqueror would have yielded an implicit assent to the doctrine that a supreme sovereignty is an inseparable incident to a grant to dispose of and to make all needful rules and regulations respecting the public domain. All right, so this is William the Conqueror. We know Fiddle Tenure started with William Conqueror in regards to parcels of the state, which you call the Central K, but we call fiefment, all right, which is a trust on behalf of a beneficiary. And if it's a beneficiary, that means that it's either as a result of a will or because of what we call statute of dispensation as afforded by the grant given by the king in lieu of the chain of title of the land. All right, which means a clear chain of title, and the only way that can be done is by tracing it back to the original grantor. All right. The Norman lawyers of William the Conqueror would have yielded an implicit assent to the doctrine that supreme sovereignty is an inseparable incident to the grant. You hear that? That a supreme sovereignty is an inseparable incident to a grant. All right, to dispose, dispensation, to transfer, to convey. All right. To dispose of and to make all needful rules and regulations respecting the public domain. They talk about making laws, all right? Statutes, rules, regulations for the dispensation of what we call property, all right? In regards to what we call land, all right? Because back then they didn't have skyscrapers, they didn't have condominiums, they had huts and stuff like so as y'all say. All right. That stuff didn't come into the 21st century or the 19th century, 18 at the highest. All right. William the Conqueror have yielded explicit assent to the doctrine that supreme sovereignty is an inseparable incident to grant, to dispose of, and to make all needful rules and regulations respecting the public domain. But an American patriot, in contrasting the European and American system, may affirm that the European sovereigns give lands to their colonists, you hear that? But reserves to themselves a power to control their property, liberty, and privileges. But the American government sells the land belonging to the people of the several states, i.e., United States, to their citizens who are already in the possession of the personal and political rights, which the government did not give and cannot take away. All right? And the advocates for the government sovereignty in the territories have been compelled to abate a portion of the pretensions originally made in its behalf and to admit that the Constitution prohibitions upon Congress operates in the territories. But a constitutional prohibition is not requisite to ascertain a limitation upon the authority of the several departments of the federal government. Nor are the states or the people restrained by the enumeration or definition of their rights or liberties. All right? To impair or diminish either the department must produce an authority for the people themselves in their constitution. And as we have seen, a power to make rules and regulations respecting the public domain does not confer municipal sovereigns over persons and things upon it. But as this is due, therefore, by our adversaries, I propose to a more definite examination of it. We have seen Congress does not dispose of or make rules and regulations respecting the domain belonging to themselves, but belonging to the United States, because all that belongs to the states was surrendered to the United States, and that was surrendered to the United States was those powers rightfully belonging to who? Everybody said King and Parliament. All right, let's come to my closing. So we see that Dred Scott case deals with slavery, selling of property, personal, tangible and intangible, as well as real property and succession of land, and that which is reserved for the crown. It's all right here. Why is it here? Why is this here in this case? I'm about to show you. They're going to show you because I revealed it. And this case has been here forever. All right? And I'm going to close out on Standard Oil Company. Dred Scott case. My opinion is that Congress is vested with the power to govern the territories of the United States by force of the third section of the fourth article of the Constitution. And I will state my reason for this opinion. Almost every provision in that instrument, here, legal instrument. So the verbiage of a legislation, a constitution, a statute, a code, a rule, a policy, all applicable to those that it was created for. All right? Almost every provision in the instrument has a history that must be understood. Before the brief and sententious language employed can be comprehended in the relations its authors intended. All right? We must bring before us the state of things presented through the convention and in regards to which it acted, when the compound provisions was made, declaring first that new states may be admitted by Congress into this union. Second, that Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or any particular state. All right? Having ascertained this historical fact, giving rise to these provisions, the difficulty of arriving at the true meaning of the language employed will be greatly lessened. The history of this fact is substantially as follows. The King of Great Britain, by his proclamation of 1763, virtually claimed that the country west of the mountains had been conquered from France and ceded to the crown of Great Britain. We're talking about France, by the Treaty of Paris of that year. And he says, we reserve it under our sovereignty, protection, and dominion for the use of the so-called Indians, who are assumed to be the aboriginals, which are nothing more than occupiers of the land based off the public trust doctrine governing the public domain. Why? Because all that land, in reference to Treaty of Paris, was left to the crown. This country was conquered from the crown of Great Britain. You hear that? And surrendered to the United States by the Treaty of Paris of 1763. The colonial charter of Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia included it. Other steps set up pretensions of claim to some portion of territory north of Ohio, but they were of no value, as I suppose, as this vacant country has been won by blood and treasures of all the states. Those whose charters did not reach it insisted that the country belonged to the states united, and that the land should be disposed of for the benefit of the whole, and to which end the Western Territory should be ceded to the states united. Are y'all ready for this? It was hardly possible to separate the power to make awful need for rules and regulations respecting the government of the territory of the disposition of the public land. North of the Ohio, Virginia conveyed the lands and vested the jurisdiction in the 13 original states. Before the Constitution was formed, she had the sole title, i.e. corporation sole, It was the Crown. You hear that? The Provincial Council of New Jersey under the Province of New Jersey was the Crown. They talking about Queen Anne. She had the sole title and sole sovereignty and the same power to see on the terms she saw proper that the King of England had to grant the Virginia colonial charter back in 1609 or to grant the charter of Pennsylvania to William Penn. The 13 states, through their representatives and deputy ministers in the old Congress, had the same rights to govern that Virginia had before the session. Everybody see? The office. People change, but positions don't. I keep telling y'all. $5.34. Ooh, what was that? Let me just read this. There was warm discussions on the clauses that relate to the subdivision of the states and the reservation of the claims of the United States and each state from any prejudice. The Maryland members revived the controversy in regards to the crown lands of the South. So everybody's talking about crown lands, right? Everybody's talking about crown lands in here in North America. Ain't talking about the continent of Europe, all right? They're talking about crown lands here in what we call the Southwest Territories, involving those lands concerning Maryland. We know Maryland is associated with a part of Virginia. All right. So they said the Maryland members revived controversy in regards to Crown land of the Southwest. There was nothing to indicate any reference to a government of territories not included within the limits of the Union. And the whole discussion demonstrates that the convention was consciously dealing with the territories whose conditions as to government had been arranged by the fundamental and unauditable compact. All right? The Articles of Confederation was a compact. Right? I was already there. Oh, come on. You can tell, y'all can tell I read, right? Okay. Dred Scott. No case in England appears to have more thoroughly examined than that of Somerset. All right. The judgment pronounced by Lord Manfield was the judgment of the Court of the King's Bench. The cause was argued at great length and with great ability by Hargrave and others who stood among the most eminent counsels in England. All right. It was held under advisement from term to term, and due sense of the importance was felt and expressed by the King's Bench. And given the opinion of the court, Lord Manfield said, the state of slavery is of such a nature that it is incapable of being introduced on any reason, moral or political, but only by positive law. Blackstone echoed the same thing. Echoed the same thing, which preserved its force long after the region, occasion, and time itself from which it was created. Is erased from memory. It is of a nature that nothing can be suffered to support it but positive law. He referred to the contrary opinion of Lord Hardwicke in October 1749 as Chancellor, that he and Lord Talbot, when Attorney and Solicitor General, were of opinion that no such claim as here presented for freedom was valid. The weight of this decision is sought to be impaired from the terms in which it was described by the exuberant imagination of Quran. The words of Lord Mansfield in giving the opinion of the court were such as were fit to be used by a great judge in most important case. It is a sufficient answer to all objections to that judgment that it was pronounced before the Revolution, and that it was considered by this court as the highest authority for nearly a century. For nearly a century, the decision in Somerset case has remained the law of England. The case of slave grace decided by Lord Stowell in 1827 does not, as he has been supposed, overrule the judgment of Lord Mansfield. Lord Stowell held that during the residence of the slave in England, no dominion, authority, or coercion can be exercised over him under another head. I shall have occasion to examine the opinion in the case of grace. To the position that slavery can only exist under the authority of law, it is objected that in the few, if any instance, it has been established by statutory enactment. That is no answer to the doctrine laid down by the court. Almost all the principles of the common law had their foundation in usage. Did you hear that? Slavery was introduced into the colonies of this country by Great Britain. We know Great Britain was established by the Scottish kings in 1707 by the Treaty of Union. All right? Before that, it was separate parliament. All right? All right? We must understand that. Slavery was introduced into the colonies of this country by Great Britain at its early period of their history, and it was protected and cherished until it became incorporated into the colonial policy. You hear that? So the colonies practiced slavery. All right? It is immaterial whether a system of slavery was introduced by an express law or otherwise, if it has the authority of law. There is no slave state where the institution is not recognized and protected by the statutory enactment and judicial decisions. Slaves are made property by the law of slave states, and as such are liable to the claims of the creditors. They descend to heirs or taxed, and in the South, they are a subject of commerce. Everybody understand that? In the case of Rankin versus Lydia, Judge Mills, speaking for the Court of Appeals of Kentucky, said, in deciding the question of slavery, we disclaim the influence of the general principles of liberty, which will all admire and conceive it ought to be decided by the law as it is, and not as it ought to be. Slavery is sanctioned by the laws of the state, and the right to hold slaves under our municipal regulation is unquestionable. But we feel this as a right existing by a positive law. You hear that? Of a municipal character without foundations in the law of nature or the unwritten and common law. I will now consider the relation which federal government bears to slavery in the state. Y'all better listen. Slavery is emphatically a state institution. This is Dred Scott case. In the 9th section of the first article of the Constitution, it provides that migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing should think proper to admit, should not be prohibited by the Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. In the convention, it was proposed by the Committee of 11 to limit the importation of slaves to the year 1800, when Mr. Pinckney moved to the extent to the time of the year 1808. This motion was carried New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia voting in the affirmative, and New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia in the negative. In opposition to the motion, Mr. Madison said 20 years will produce all the mischief that can be apprehended from the liberty to import slaves, so long a term will be more dishonorable to the American character than to say nothing about it in the Constitution. It's about to get good, y'all. The provisions in regard to slave trade shows clearly that Congress considered slavery a state institution to be continued and regulated by its individual sovereignty, and to conciliate that interest, the slave trade was continued 20 years, not as a general measure, but for the benefit of such states as shall think proper and carries it. Did y'all hear that? In the case of Groves versus Slaughter, Messrs. Tate and Webster contended that under the commercial power, Congress had the right to regulate the slave trade among the several states. But the court held that Congress had no power to interfere with the slavery as existed in the states or to regulate what is called slave trade among them. If the trades were subject to the commercial power, it would follow that Congress would abolish or establish slavery in every state in the Union. The only connection with the federal government hold with slaves in a state arises from the provisions of the Constitution, which declares that no person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. This being a fundamental law of the federal government, it rests mainly for its execution, as has been held on the judicial power of the Union. And so far as the rendition of fugitives from labor has become a subject of judicial action, the federal obligation has been faithfully discharged. In formation of the federal Constitution, care was taken to confer no power of the federal government to interfere with its institution in the state, and the provisions respecting the slave trade and fixing the ratio of the representation, providing for the reclamation of fugitives from labor slaves, were referred to as persons, and no other respect are they considered in the Constitution. We need not refer to the mercenary spirit which introduced the infamous traffic in slaves to show the degradation of Negro slaves in our country. This system was imposed upon our colonial settlement by the mother country, and is due to truth say that the commercial colonies and states were chiefly engaged in the traffic. But we know as historical fact that James Madison, that great and good man, a leading member in the Federal Convention, was solicitous to guard the language of that instrument so as not to convey ideas that there could be property in man. Sure. Okay, yeah. Right here. There could be property in man. I prefer the light of Madison, Hamilton, and Jay as a means of construing the Constitution in all its bearings, rather than to look behind that period and to a traffic which is now declared to be piracy and punished with death by Christian nations. I do not like to draw the source of our domestic relations from so dark a ground. Our independence was a great epoch in the history of freedom. And while I'll admit the government was not made especially for a colored race, yet many of them were citizens of New England states and exercised the right of suffrage when the Constitution was adopted, and it was not doubted by any intelligent person that its tendency would greatly ameliorate their condition. Many of the states on the adoption of the Constitution or shortly afterward took measures to abolish slavery within their respective jurisdictions. It is a well-known fact that a belief was cherished by the leading men, South as well as North, that the institution of slavery would gradually decline until it would become extinct. The increased value of slavery, labor, and culture, of cotton and sugar prevented the realization of this expectation. Like all the communities and states, the South were influenced by what they considered to be their own interests. But if we turn our attention to the dark ages of the world. It didn't say the Middle Age countries, colonies, state. It said, but if we turn our attentions to the dark ages of the world, we why confine our view to color slavery on the principles white men were made slaves. Did you hear that? But if we turn our attention to the dark ages of the world, why confine our view to color slavery on the same principles white men were made slaves? All slaves has its origin and power and against rights. So if the dark ages of the world that in the view of color slavery on the principles that we're talking about in this Dred Scott case, it clearly says that white men were made slaves. And that's just what it just said. White men were made slaves. All right. And we know it said that white men practiced slavery in the colonies under the Articles of the Confederation. So that brings me to this in closing. Let me just find it real quick. I don't want to be searching. Y'all bear with me. That was 380. Make sure. Bear with me. Give me 1 second. I don't find it. I'll move forward. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it, y'all. It's in that case, anyways, in this case. So as we can see, that slavery, according to the Dred Scott case, in the Middle Ages, didn't start with us. All right, it started with the European. All right, i.e., the white person. All right, and we see that that has been switched. And this is the reason why the church broke away from the state, broke away from the church to hide that fact that the Church of England, which they inherited, was enslaving the English. All right. And this is why we had the English Time reform done by the Kings of Wessex, which was trying to maintain the spirit of the peaceful city, which is uh, historically and religiously told about in that book. All right. So wake up, my brothers and sisters, and see the truth that's right before your eyes, but see it in a concrete way, not the abstract. And with that, we at the Third English Church of England, and I, your King, says peace.